Hello, welcome back to Artsy-Island-Girl. Today I'm going to do a beach resin on a wood round. So these are ones that my husband was helping a buddy with a dead tree and took home a bunch of rounds for me. I sat them in the basement for a few months to make sure that they were nice and dry. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to seal that wood. I need to seal that wood because part of it is the entire thing is completely porous. So I'm using my first layer of resin to try to seal it. And full disclosure, I completely underestimated how much it was going to take to completely seal the piece. Now it has to be sealed, otherwise I'm gonna get bubbles rising when I'm trying to do the beach pour part of it. So I need to make sure that it is fully sealed. There are some large gaps in this piece as well, so I wanted to make sure that that was completely filled so that when it came time to do the beach pour, I had a clean surface to work on. So the first layer, I tried to just do the surface and fill in some of the holes in the center and the sides along the bark. This is the next day. I'm doing another layer because that first day it completely sucked up so much resin and there was still some gaping holes in there. So I'm going to again try to just do the surface of it. There are holes along the side right by the bark that I am trying to fill up as well. And this was a piece for the prep that I really needed to watch while I was prepping because you can see all of those bubbles bubbling up in the center. There is just so much space there that I needed to seal completely before working on it. So I spent hours after each time I poured, popping bubbles with my heat gun and checking on it because I also didn't want an uneven surface. And I wanted to fill in all of those holes. And to be honest, not like I minded because playing in the resin is really kind of fun, but I wanted everything completely sealed up first. So after those first two, I think it might have been 3 coats of resin, I went out to the sander to sand because I was still having bubbles bubble up and I wanted to make sure that I could get some of the excess that was building up off. So once that is done, I'm doing one more coat on this side. Just to make a nice, clean, even surface. So if I remember correctly, I sanded both sides because I resined both sides. I'm also taking a paintbrush that will be tossed after this because there's no way to take that resin off. And I'm sealing the sides of my piece as well. I didn't want to have bark exposed that could possibly be fragile and break off, so I am completely sealing it. And because it's so uneven, I need to make sure to use a brush to get in all the nooks and crannies. And again, using the heat gun to remove any of the bubbles that are raising to the surface. And even just like this, once it was cured just like this, that would have been a really, really cool coffee table, but we had to keep going further. So I've got my blue mixed here that I'm going to use for the darkest part of the beach pour. And then I'm going to let my cup sit there so it can drain a little bit more. And then I have my lighter of the blues. To pour down. So these paints, or these resins, I just used acrylic paint to color them. Because I wanted there to be a little bit of opacity. I wanted to be able to see the blue on top of the wood. I didn't want them to be transparent. So I'm starting with my dark color. I'm spreading it out. I'm also spreading it down the sides because I'm trying to help it to flow down the sides as evenly as possible. Since it doesn't have a smooth surface to it, it's not gonna flow down the sides as evenly as we would like, but I'm trying to control it a little bit. So I'm going to also put the sides, or the light color down the sides, and as I'm smoothing it out, I'm trying to smooth out how I want the edge of my beach here to look. And And then I also mixed a little bit of the dark in with the light of the blues. I don't want to have a strong line between the light and the dark. I want it to be a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to do a layer of clear right along the edge of the blue, and then I'm going to do my line of white. And for the white, I have casting craft pigment mixed in with my resin. That is the one that I tend to like using the most. So now I'm going to take my heat gun. I'm using it with the nozzle that just comes on it. I'm not putting any extra nozzles. I'm using it on the lightest setting possible, the lowest setting possible, and I'm just going to remove all the bubbles that have risen to the surface. Once that is done, I'm going to take the fine tip and I'm going to use it on a high speed to blow those waves out. And I'm holding my heat gun as horizontal as possible to the piece to blow it out a little bit farther. And then it tends to develop a little bit of an edge when you blow it out the first time, so I use the heat gun to blow that out a little bit more, make it a little bit more subtle. And you can see that my white edge changed a little bit as I was blowing. I can go back with my silicone stick and the white, and I can even that out so that it has a nice clean edge when it's curing. At this point, it's really easy to do because the resin is really quite fluid. I'm going to take my baker's torch and I'm going to lightly torch it. And what that tends to do is it makes the cells in the white pop. And I find it doesn't happen immediately. It happens over time, but somehow it helps. And I didn't like that on the left side. The white got a little bit thin. So I just wanted to add a little bit more to it. I want it to be a little bit more even. And this is the time to do it because once it's cured, you can't really fix it. I'm trying to make it look as natural as possible. As natural as a resin beach on a wood round looks. So I decided to blow that out one more time because the white got a little bit thick for my liking there. So now while the resin is still wet, we are going to add our shells, our starfish or sand dollars, whatever you want to be on the edge of the little beach here. When you put it in the wet resin, it's going to cure with it, and that's going to ensure that you don't have to glue it on afterwards and hope it doesn't fall off. It's just going to be right embedded in the piece. So I've got my little tiny shells as well. And if you put something down and you don't really like it, you can easily pick it up and move it. Once it's completely cured, you can't obviously do that anymore. I've got a little bit bigger shells here that I'm adding, and then I added some pebbles. Now we're on the next day and I'm doing my second wave. This is the dark color here, and then my light color. Again, I'm going to use my gloved hand to spread it out. I'm doing the dark part first, and then I'm also spreading it along the sides to try to get it to run down the edges a little bit evenly. And then I'm going to decide where I want the edge of the wave to go. create that line. And I also blend the dark and the light a little bit together as well. I don't want a big clear ridge or a clear division between the light and the dark, so I'm going to blend that a bit. Now I am putting my clear line and then I'm going to put my line of white. Also making sure that it runs down the side as well. And again, it's not going to be a hard line down the side, but I do want to see that continuity. So then I'm going to take my heat gun, and on the lowest setting, I'm just running it along the piece and popping any of the bubbles that have risen to the surface. Once that is done, I take the fine tip and use a high setting, hold the heat gun as horizontal as possible, and I'm going to blow that white out. And then once I've gone over it once, I blur that line that is created when the white gets blown out. And now we're on the third day. Nope, same day. I'm adding a little bit of white to the dark. I just wanted to break that up a little bit. Because I have another wave going on top of this, it's going to be blurred even more, but I just found that the blue was just a little bit dark, so I just wanted to break it up a bit. And it's going to add a little bit more interest to the next layer as well, because you'll still be able to see that. It's just going to be really subtle. Then I take my baker's torch, torch it super quickly. Don't want to torch it too much because you can burn your resin. What we're doing is we're just making the cells pop in the white. And now we're on the third day, just adding my little bit of dark blue. And then my little bit of light blue. Going to use your gloved hand to spread it out and create the line that you want the edge of the wave to be. Now I typically try to make sure that that line is a little bit different from the previous line. I don't want my waves to be exactly the same because that doesn't look natural in my opinion. Again, putting the resin down the edge, trying to get it to drip evenly. And then spreading out the blue and also blurring the line between the light and the dark color so that it transitions a little bit more evenly. Next, we're doing a line of clear resin. And then my line of white. Decided to put a few little strings of white in the blue as well, using the heat gun on the lowest setting, popping all of the bubbles that have risen to the surface. And then adding the narrow tip to it. I'm going to blow out those little thin lines first, so then when I blow up my big white one, I'm going to blow over top of that. So once again, holding the heat gun as horizontal as possible. And then blowing that white from the wave out. And then spreading that line that gets created. And then use the baker's torch and quickly go over top of it again. And then let it cure. So this is the next day. I'm using a towel to put the piece on so it doesn't get scratched. And I'm using a sander to remove all of the resin drips from the back that have accumulated. And this is what the piece looks like when it's completely done. I'm so happy with how it turned out. It was exactly what I was imagining in my head. If you enjoyed this, subscribe so you get notifications for more videos. Have a great day.